and welcome to Pride Action TV. I'm Joshua Oakes, the Digital Policy Manager for the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. And we're here with Pride Action Tank today, a project of the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. Pride Action Tank is an organization that fights for LGBTQ communities through action and advocacy on all kinds of different issues. And we're going to talk about a specific issue today. So before I introduce my guests, I want to kind of give you a little background of what we're talking about today. So on July 26, Donald Trump tweeted about a policy change that would ban transgender individuals from enlisting and serving in the military, overturning the Obama-era decision allowing trans individuals to serve openly. Trump's Twitter statement was released without any guidance for enacting this new policy, but on August 25th, he officially submitted a guidance for its implementation, and Lambda Legal, a national legal nonprofit focused on LGBTQ issues, filed a lawsuit against Trump in order to stop this policy change. Most recently, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has provided an additional statement that no changes would be made at the time and was pending a further study. So today, I'm talking with Kara Englehart, a fellow from Lambda Legal, about the details of the guidance of the lawsuit. So thank you so much for joining us, Kara.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Great. And so we wanted to start the conversation for those of our watchers who don't know a lot about this. We want to give a general brief overview, but also a reminder, this is a live call-in show, so feel free to call in questions. I have questions for Kara, and we'll go through some things, but if you have a question, please call 312-738-1060, and we'll take your questions live. But so, Kara, just to start off, can you tell us a little about what this policy change, if enacted, would mean for current and prospective trans military personnel?
Sure. So there are multiple different effects of the memo that was issued on the August 25th. First, it will continue the ban on transgender people who want to enlist or commission as officers into the military. Additionally, medical health care related to transition care, specifically surgeries, will be halted for those who are currently serving. And finally, General Mattis has been given discretion to determine what it means to be worldwide deployable for transgender people, which could affect their ability to continue serving such that they may be separated.
Sure. So you said earlier, the current ban. So as of right now, Obama had put in a directive to change that and gave it a period of time before that would happen. So this policy change just reinstates the ban and removes that deadline, or can you explain a little bit what that means?
Yes. So way back on June 30th, 2016, Secretary of Defense at the time, Ash Carter, lifted the ban on transgender service. So at that time, anybody who was trans could come out in the military and serve openly. It didn't lift the ban on joining the military. He gave a year for the military to become ready for transgender folks to enlist or be commissioned. That meant that they had a year to develop regulations and policies and do trainings and implementations. And then June 30th, 2017 rolled around, and General Mattis said, we need 6 more months to continue putting all of this change into place. And that would have meant that on January 1st, 2018, transgender people could assess into the military. But then on July 25th, the president delivered those tweets, marking a change in sentiment, at least, towards transgender people serving. And so what it does, this new memo released recently, is maintains the current ban, but we were going in a direction of more inclusion.
No, that's great. So let's talk about the tweet a little bit, and I'll put the tweet back up here. So it basically says, after consultation with generals and military experts, please be advised that the United States government will not accept or allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the U.S. military, or our military must be focused on decisive and overwhelming victory and cannot be burdened with the tremendous medical costs and disruption that transgender in the military would entail. Thank you. So we can talk a little bit about that. Can you break down a little bit some of the things that are said in that, and things that are factual and things that are not factual?
Okay, so he gives a reason for wanting to ban transgender people from the military, specifically about high healthcare costs. But according to the Palm Center, a think tank that does research on the military and how it intersects with LGBT issues, it would cost the military $960 million to replace all of the transgender people who are currently serving, their expertise and skills. if they were to separate. That's almost 100 times the cost of transition-related health care that the military would bear for people to continue serving. So that's the first. I'm trying to look over your shoulder here. That would be, and okay, so he also says that transgender people are disruptive to the military. And that, according to the RAND study, is false. There was another commission study by the military of a nonpartisan think tank called the RAND organization, and they came up with information and a study that showed that transgender people do not cause issues or instability or affect military readiness in any way.
That's great. So let's talk about this guidance. This statement that was released. It was released on Twitter, just out of the blue, honestly, for a lot of people who weren't understanding that it was coming. And it's not a policy change. So he did a tweet that wasn't a policy change, and then on August 25th released guidance for implementation of what he put out in his tweet. So can we talk a little bit about what specifically the guidance that was submitted on the 25th says?
Sure. So what was submitted or released on the 25th from the White House was actually a memorandum to the Department of Defense, to Secretary Mattis, guiding him towards implementation of the policy. And so what it does is a few different things. It continues the accessions ban. It says that starting January 1st, 2018, the ban will continue. It says that the Secretary has until February 21st or sometime in February to determine what it means for people to be deployable. And it also has policy guidance on the current provisions of transition-related surgeries, meaning that they should be halted at this time. So we've already been hearing that from people who had scheduled surgeries, people in the military who had scheduled surgeries related to their transition care as guided by their doctors, by medical professionals. They've been taken off the calendar completely, not just paused, but completely canceled.
And I think I remember hearing somewhere in there that the lobbying group that had spoken to Trump before this tweet came out said that we were not asking for removal or stoppage, we were simply not wanting health care to be provided. And so I just find it kind of interesting that he gets from, not even what the lobbyist was having a conversation about, but goes directly to none at all, no one, everybody get out.
Right. He was a little bit more extreme than even the more extreme people were calling for. I think that's an accurate representation.
Great. So let's talk about you've said deployability. So let's talk a little bit about what deployability means, specifically in case of all military personnel, and also compared to transgender individuals.
So transgender individuals shouldn't be kept to a standard any different than any other military member. And transgender individuals are currently capably serving and completing their duties with honor. But this new policy could mean that there could be sort of back doors allowed which would allow discrimination, because there is a provision in this memo that we talked about for the General Mattis to determine what it means to be deployable for transgender troops.
So it's General Mattis who would make that decision, not individual supervisors within the military?
Well, of course, there's discretion on down the chain of command, so it could be that something could be placed in someone's file that would signal that someone would not be deployable, and that decision would be made further down the chain of command. General Mattis isn't going to individually determine for every single person what it means, but the crux of the matter is that transgender people shouldn't be held to a different standard than anyone else, and they are capably serving at the current standard that everyone else is being held to.
Absolutely. And is there this may be going too much into military protocol that you may not know, but is there a way to determine, or for people to file grievances if something's put into their file that they believe was put in there because of discriminatory nature, because this individual supervisor doesn't like transgender individuals? Is there a way for them to contest those kind of issues that would make them not deployable?
That is going a little beyond my understanding of what happens in the military, but I think like any form of employment-based discrimination, it can get a little complicated, and it's not necessarily clear-cut when someone is holding animus in their mind's eye when they are evaluating somebody else. So it might be that even if something was placed in your file that could be read to make you not deployable, it wouldn't necessarily be something that was necessarily related to your transgender status. It could be something else disguising the discrimination. Does that
Yeah, I think that
answer your
makes
question?
sense.
Okay.
So we have a tweet on July 26th, then we have a memo / guidance on August 25th, and then on August 27th, Lambda Legal did the great and amazing thing and filed lawsuit against Donald Trump to stop this as quickly as possible. So Kara is with Lambda Legal, so I want to give you a little opportunity to talk about this lawsuit specifically, why Lambda Legal brought it, what it means, who it impacts, all those things.
Sure. So our lawsuit is known as Karnofsky v. Trump. We filed it in Seattle, Washington, on behalf of 3 individuals and 2 organizational plaintiffs. We're working with people who are currently serving and who wish to enlist, 2 people who wish to enlist, and 1 person who's being barred from what it would be seen as like a promotion, but technically in order for her to go from an enlisted member to what's called a warrant officer, you have to separate from the military for 1 day or so, and then rejoin as a commissioned officer. And that rejoining is technically an accessions issue, so someone who's currently serving is being affected by the accessions ban. Additionally, we represent the Gender Justice League in Seattle and the Human Rights Campaign, the national LGBT organization, who both have affected members in their organizations. And we are suing based on 3 different legal arguments that there's an equal protection violation, a due process violation, and a freedom of speech violation, because we're arguing that this policy is discriminatory as applied to transgender people, but additionally that transgender people are being treated differently than non-transgender people, but additionally that the policy is creating an atmosphere that would make someone feel chilled in their speech, chilled in their expression of their gender identity, which we are alleging is a violation of the First Amendment.
So let's talk a little bit about why this step. So the memo comes out, the guidance, and a lawsuit is immediately filed. In instances of such overt discrimination, and the lawsuit has not been settled, but I'm going to say overt discrimination. Why is it so important to file suit and file suit quickly?
Because people are being immediately harmed today. 2 of our plaintiffs would enlist in the military today if they could, and they're being prevented from doing so. But additionally, every day that Katie Schmid, our currently serving plaintiff, isn't able to ascend to the status of warrant officer, it becomes less likely that her application will be successful because she already has had an age waiver to allow her to apply to be a warrant officer. And so when we brought suit to try to stop this policy from going into effect and try to stop the atmosphere of discrimination, and the sooner we file suit, the sooner we can seek relief. Our lawsuit primarily focuses on the accessions issue, and so we would like to change the status that is currently preventing transgender people from joining, and we'd like to do that as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so let's talk about the timing. The memo was put out to go into effect when the ban was supposed to end on January 1st, right?
Right.
So could anything be done? Could Trump do anything before to get that ban to go through faster? Could the courts maybe not get to this in time before that deadline is hit? Kind of what is the possibilities of for people who are currently serving might face based on the timeline of getting this lawsuit through the system?
Okay, so I think you asked whether or not Trump could do something to make the ban go into place sooner, but the ban is already in place, keeping people from enlisting, so that has been what's going on for a long time.
I guess maybe I mean removing current military personnel. Could he accelerate that before the ban?
So his memo outlines specific dates for when General Mattis should implement different parts of the ban. So he's already made it so today, starting today, people's surgeries are being canceled. People we know are reporting that they've already been separated. Separation is what it's called when you're removed from the military. People are already being separated based on their transgender status. So I don't really know how much sooner he could implement something. The mere fact of creating this atmosphere of discrimination has already been having cascading effects. Mattis did come out to try to say that that the implementation wasn't going to be until the spring, as the memo denotes, but it's not a freeze. People are being denied their surgeries, and people are being separated, and people are facing discrimination today.
So how can Okay, so people are being separated now, even though it wasn't supposed to happen, if at all, until this line. So
Anecdotally, anyway.
anecdotally, okay. So that was kind of my question: is like, what if an individual is being separated? Are they having conversations with their superior officer and saying like, this is not what's supposed to be happening right now, or those kind of things, or do they immediately come to somebody like Lambda Legal and say, hey, I was removed and
So we know about this because people did come to us and our partner OutServe. We filed our lawsuit in conjunction with OutServe SLDN, the legal organization that advocates for LGBT people who are currently serving and are veterans. And so we and OutServe have heard from different people about their experiences since the tweet, since the statements from the Joint Chiefs the day after, since the memo was released, since Mattis spoke. People are conveying that there is discrimination going on already.
yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like the messages from the Joint Chief, if I remember correctly, that's the outpour of that people who want to serve in the military should be able to serve in the military if they're deployable. Was a statement from Joint Chiefs that has really not ever happened before. Like there's usually a rank and file. You do a certain thing, you don't question, you don't say anything against what a standing president has to say, and to have the Joint Chiefs say like this is not the right thing was kind of a big deal.
Right, because what's important to the military and to the armed forces is that there are capable people who are ready, willing, and able to put their lives on the line for the country. These transgender people who are currently serving, the some 15,000 people who are currently serving, are able-bodied and are deployable. And that's what matters to military leaders, and that's why they oppose the ban.
So the second part of that timing question that I kind of want to touch on, and I think it's a short answer to, is that if the lawsuit, the legal system is not able to push through this part before that January deadline and some of this starts being implemented, that's a possibility, right?
That's a possibility, but there are different lawsuits moving at different paces. It's possible that there could be an injunction, a preliminary injunction, that could stop different parts of the policy from going into place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like the travel ban.
Yes, it's very similar to the travel ban. There are multiple suits across the country strategically trying to figure out what could be the best way to stop this policy from going into effect.
And I think we kind of went a little bit of this way earlier, and this is not a question that I gave you so hopefully that it's okay. But what is maybe the impact what does the guidance specifically say about veterans, people who have been discharged from the military in good standing currently and are getting like veterans benefits from the VA? Does it affect veterans, I guess?
There's nothing in the memo, nothing tweeted in his tweet by policy by tweet that would affect veterans. There are issues with care for transgender veterans, but that's not what we are addressing in our lawsuit, and that's not what the memo was designed to address.
So trans and veterans who are currently going through maybe transition now through VA services, that memo or the policy that has frozen those medical services for currently standing did not freeze it for VA patients.
No, but the policies for providing transition-related health care to the veterans is different and separate and apart from what the policy is for people who are currently serving. And our lawsuit doesn't speak to that, and the memo doesn't speak to that either.
Great. The next one. Deployability, we had a conversation about that. But I did want to talk about, so we talked about deployability, and if individuals are removed, or what was the word that you used? Separated. What could be the long-term impact on individuals, trans individuals who are separated through this?
So it's a loss of someone's designed career. Many of the people that we speak to have a desire to serve in the military up until the age of retirement or up until the age that their bodies are no longer able to serve. So that affects your goals and your dreams and your life plan. People are in the military like they're in any other career plan for the reliability to be able to provide for their families. And should you remove that opportunity for them, then transgender people specifically who face discrimination at an increased level from cisgender people in many facets of life will then have to face that instead of having the stable career that they deserve and have earned a space in. So transgender people who are not in the military, or transgender people generally, face discrimination in employment, in housing, in education. All three of those things are stable for people who are currently serving.
Yeah, I think I want to take a little step back because we started the conversation without maybe giving a broad overview of just the statistics, not necessarily statistics, but the makeup of trans individuals within the military. We know a lot of statistics about trans individuals within the community in the U.S., but what is kind of the makeup of trans individuals in the military? What is the percentage of trans people who are serving openly? What is the percentage of trans people who are in the recruitment phase? Like those kind of things.
So we don't have hard numbers necessarily on transgender folks who are what percentage of the military is transgender folks. We do, I guess you could extrapolate. So the ideas or the understanding is that there's upwards to 15,000 people currently serving who are transgender, and that there is data that shows that the percentage of the population of people currently serving that is transgender is higher than in the general population.
Well, did you have any other points that we wanted to touch on that we may have overlooked throughout the conversation?
Well, I do want to say that if you or anyone you know is being affected by this new memo and new policy, please contact Lambda Legal or OutServe. We would like to hear your story. It could help us strategize for us to make the best choices going forward to try to change this policy.
I also remind people that it's a live call-in show. We've only got about 4 minutes left, so maybe not a lot of time, but if you have a quick question, call the number on the screen, and we can get your last question in before the end of the show. Lambda has filed a suit, but also there have been other nonprofit organizations that filed suit, just real quick because we don't have a lot of time. But can you tell us a little bit about how it's different, or if they are in conjunction with the ACLU? And I forgot the other one, but yeah.
So there are 3 lawsuits. There is the lawsuit that Lambda Legal and OutServe filed. There's also a lawsuit that the ACLU National filed. And third, there is a lawsuit filed by the National Center for Lesbian Rights and the LGBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, or NCLR and GLAD. That one is filed in Washington, D.C. The ACLU suit is filed in Maryland, and ours is in Seattle and Washington. They are different. The NCLR GLAD suit was just amended. The complaint was amended yesterday, and they filed a motion for preliminary injunction. So their suit and our suit address the accessions issue. They also represent people who are currently serving, as does the ACLU. We are heartened that our sister organizations are likewise setting out strategies to address this policy, because it's communicating directly to the White House, directly to the military, that we are watching you and we are watching you closely.
I think that's great, and I think that's really important, was that the ACLU said, anytime Trump does something discriminatory, we will be there to respond. And I think that's really important with organizations like ACLU and Lambda Legal, who are always there on the front, ready to do what needs to be done to when these kind of things come down, and they come very often.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to put back up for you the information about Pride Action Tank. So Pride Action Tank has a lot of great components and projects within itself. Everything from CRAP, the Chicago Restroom Access Project, to our Tiny Homes Initiative, Out Aging, which is a summit/project that's working on LGBTQ aging. You can look at our website at prideactiontank.org. You can also email us at prideactiontank@agechicago.org if you have any questions for myself or Kim Hunt, our executive director, who is manning the phone lines currently and doing an amazing job. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Pride Action Tank on both of those. We really appreciate you being here today, Kara, right?
Kara, thank you.
Let's call you Kara. Being here and having this conversation with us, I think it's a really opportune moment to have this conversation. And a lot was happening very recently about this, and I'm sure that we'll hear more. I know that I stick to my news sites, and I find out new things that are happening every time, and I hear a lot of stories about currently serving, prospective serving, and veteran trans individuals who are coming out and talking about their story. And I think that's really important to get your story out there, and to contact Lambda Legal if you're having any specific issues, or any of the other great organizations, OutServe, any of those organizations that can be there to assist. But well, thank you again, Kara, for being here.
Thank you very
much. And we will see you, audience members, in October. We don't necessarily know what the subject matter is yet, but also in October is our 2-year anniversary of Pride Action Tank on October 19th. And so we'll have a little bit more information about a party we're having, or an event we're having for our 2-year anniversary. But thank you so much for being here today, and have a good day.